meeting in the background.
Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, I clicked on it.
Okay, now
Green.
click on the green dot right here.
Okay. And then we just need to go verify that we're on. Okay, we're all just verifying that we're on live. Oh, we are. Okay. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. This is attorney Robyn McCoy. And we have
Tracey Martin.
Yes, we have attorney Tracey Martin, and we have Madam Prosecutor Kym Worthy herself here for an interview. So I have, we have this is Politico Coffee with Robyn and Tracey. So I have my American flag mug, and I have tea. I have raspberry, burdock, and dandelion tea. So and lemon and honey.
Dandelion tea. Where do you get that from, Robyn?
Oh, the health food store. Like you can get it at Whole Foods.
Okay, fantastic. And what about you, Madam Prosecutor? I see that you've got your mug today.
I have a mug that says "Straight Out of Detroit."
Okay.
One of my favorite places to go is a place in the Fisher Building that has all Detroit-themed information. So I love going in there and looking around.
Oh, okay.
Fantastic. I've got one of those Straight Out of Detroit mugs too, but I've misplaced it. And so seeing yours reminded me that I've got to locate it somewhere around here.
I need to get one.
Yeah.
Well, there's a store called, I believe it's called Detroit 313. It's in the Fisher Building, which is, not far from my friend Rachel Lutz's Peacock Room. So it's around the same area. So they have shirts, they have sweatshirts, they have license plate. They have all kind of things, all kind of Detroit memorabilia. So it's great.
Nice. I like that. And what are you drinking today? Are you drinking water? Okay.
Yep, I had my juice. I had my squeezed pressed juice earlier. So now I'm just having some water.
And what type of juice do you drink, Madam Prosecutor?
Usually beet juice. I try to drink beet juice like 2 or 3 times a week, and then I try to drink cherry juice some of the other days. And then some days I have my favorite, which is cranberry.
Oh, nice. I like cranberry. It's really good. Yeah, my mom's a nurse, so cranberry is really good for you. Yeah.
Cleaning out those systems.
Right.
As is cherry and beet juice as well. Beet juice, of course, is good for the heart and other organisms.
Right. Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear you're staying healthy. And today I have brought my very special mug. Believe it or not, this is a mug. And
that's very festive.
Yes, I brought this in memory of my late sister-in-law, Wiki Napier. She actually gave this to my husband and I. She was a frequent traveler and loved Las Vegas. And so, the casinos are all trying to open, not only in Michigan, but across the country. I know the casinos did a walkthrough, or I don't know if I think it was virtual for the governor, because, they want to get back in the business. And so I have brought my Paris mug, and it's real. And taking a sip of my special Cafe Vienna coffee, and I have it infused with Michigan honey. So I'm trying to stay a little healthy too, Madam Prosecutor. So.
I can't drink coffee. It helped me on the ceiling. I drink, caffeine is just, I can't do it.
Yeah, I can't do coffee. I don't do coffee either. I may do like hot cocoa, but that's it. I don't do coffee. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm flying solo on the coffee tip, but speaking of the governor, congratulations, Prosecutor Worthy, on getting the big endorsement from Governor Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah, I think she's phenomenal. And as I said in the press conference that we had, she's rated among the top 3 governors in the country as to how she's handled the COVID crisis. So she's one of the brightest women I've met. She's wickedly funny too. And really is, and just has very quick on her feet, and then has a compelling backstory as well. So I was proud to ride the bus with her when she was running 2 years ago, and I'll be right back on the bus when she's running again. So I'm a big supporter of hers.
Oh, wow. Yes. Well, Tracey and I both were supporters of her from the beginning. So, we definitely saw talent, and I'm definitely, as far as you think about the safety of our state, we have the right governor in this crisis to make sure that we're all safe and protected. And so speaking of safety, so we have you here. We know you have an election. What the primary is August 4th, and we had your opponent, Ms. Burton Harris, on last week. So we definitely want to make sure we had opportunity to engage with you, and talk with you about your platform and police reform. And so I want to start with the Malice Green, because I was in high school. I was aware of Malice Green, but I'm big on, I do my programs on what to do when stopped by the police. I've reached out to you. You've helped with getting panelists from your office to join us for that. I want to ask about, well, let me start with why. The first question I know a lot of people, young people too, would want to know is, what made you decide to become a prosecutor?
Well, that's still a story I still can't answer even after 35 years of practice. And it's just something I always wanted to do. My father was the first African-American from Michigan to graduate from West Point. And so we lived through him and my mother, the civil rights movement that came up from the South. I didn't have any lawyers in my family at all. I certainly didn't want to have a profession where I moved every, 9 months or a year to a different place, sometimes out of the country. And so it was something that was ingrained in me. I don't know where it came from. And I'm the first lawyer in my family. And it's just something I always wanted to do since the 6th grade. I remember that vividly. There was an old show, you can see it on TV now with the reruns, but there's an old show called Julia. And Diane Carroll was the star of that show.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
And so I'm showing my age. And my parents didn't let me watch television. And I don't really let my children watch much television either. And I used to sneak downstairs and watch her show, because that was a very widely heralded show where you're seeing a Black woman during those times leading a show. And I remember there was one episode where there was an African-American male lawyer, and I was just struck ever since then. And I thought that I could do it. My parents told me always through my life that I could do everything that I set my mind to. And it was from watching her show, sneaking down the back stairs, when I saw that lawyer portrayed in that particular episode of Julia.
Oh, that's beautiful.
She was a nurse. You're too young probably, but she was a nurse.
Oh no, I've seen it. My mom's a nurse. Yeah, no, I've seen that show. Yeah. I know my dad is a lawyer, and he said for him, he didn't have any, in his family there were no lawyers. So he said Perry Mason is what did it for him. That's what made him decide to become a lawyer, is Perry Mason. Yeah,
so I didn't watch Perry Mason back then. It was Julia and a few other shows. I would sneak downstairs to watch Star Trek, believe it or not, was another one.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
I love Star Trek too. Yeah, because Star Trek, as you know, Prosecutor Worthy was so ahead of its time in terms of race relations and interracial relationships and
cell phones, computers, everything.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And we're talking about technology. I do want to ask you about this case that was in the media just yesterday. Mm-hmm. Robert Williams. And I wanted to ask you about, technology, I do believe, can help engineer social change. We saw that on Star Trek, and now we see it in real life. But sometimes technology goes awry. And so what is your take on facial recognition technology in terms of policing and the law? And
almost exactly a year ago, and I hope we can go back and talk about Malice Green, but almost exactly a year ago, the Detroit Police Department and they had been trying to get me to do this and trying to get me to do this and trying to get me to do this. And I had resisted. So finally, they brought me their facial recognition technology program. And I had done a lot of research on that. I had actually been to recently, before that, a seminar on it. And I had read all the studies, and I knew about the very, very huge problems they had with identifying people of color and misidentifying people of color. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. If you can convince me later on, but right now with the state of the technology and the state of the studies that are being done, we're not going to do it. So what I did at that time, and this was a year ago, and this predates the case happened in 2018 that you're talking about, Mr. Williams' case, January 2018, and this was June of 2019. So we didn't have a facial recognition policy in place at that time. And so I required now, when we had any case that came in, number one, we had to have it recognized in the documents that came over, the warrant request, the police reports, that there was facial recognition technology there. And then whenever a case comes in now and for a year, then it goes directly to a supervisor. They have to sign off on it. That's not the way it is for most of our cases. And you have to have corroborative evidence that alone that sustains the case and makes it believe that you can prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt, completely independent of any facial recognition technology. So the only time that we see it really is in an investigative tool, just like a polygraph, and it's not admissible in court. But we don't see it. We haven't seen it in a very long time as a main part of a case because we don't accept those cases.
I see. I mean, as you know, and we're going to get back to Malice.
And when I say we don't accept them, I mean we send it back for further investigation.
You send it back. I see.
Right.
So, being that facial recognition technology is, well, in my opinion, it's a flawed technology in terms of misidentifying people of color. What is your take, or do you support a moratorium, a ban on facial recognition technology until the technology can get better?
What I do support is no independent basis. You have to have an independent basis. For example, if there's a homicide case of a child and they use facial technology to find a witness, let's say, but there's all kinds of supporting documentation beyond that. There's a confession. There are five, I'm just making up the fact, but there are 5 eyewitnesses that can testify to it. We're not going to reject that case. We'll reject the facial technology part of the case, but we're not going to reject the case if it has other independent evidence of that. It has other evidence. It has DNA. It has serology. It may have any other type of forensic evidence that can strongly support it absent the facial recognition technology if it's used as certainly as an identification tool. I'm not going to say we're going to reject cases. What we have done though is there's got to be, we don't use their technology. We have rejected that, and I think now because of this case, frankly, that they are questioning it themselves.
I see, right. And the Robert Williams case, that was ultimately dismissed, as I understand it.
Yeah, what happened on that case, and this was a case, it was a retail fraud that happened out of Shinola. And the security company that Shinola employs got the tape from this incident. And they sent the tape over to the Detroit Police Department. The Detroit Police Department took that tape and as a result of that tape, used that tape to develop a profile that eventually landed on Mr. Williams. Then they sent the tape back to Shinola and they had the guard pick out the defendant based on that technology and the fact that he had already seen that, the grainy feel. I don't know how, I never saw the tape. So he'd already seen him supposedly in this tape. It was never investigated by DPD or anybody else. They never talked to the clerk. And we found out later that she was not going to cooperate anyway. But what happened, as far as we're concerned, is my prosecutor should never have issued it. And when a supervisor caught it, I think it was maybe 10 days later, we immediately petitioned for it to be dismissed, and it happened prior to the PCC. So there was no particular court hearing, but that doesn't take away from the fact that Mr. Williams was held in the jail for, I think, 30 hours, I think is what I've been told. So it doesn't take away from 1 minute that he was held there wrongfully. But again, I run a large office. I'm not going to throw any of my assistants under the bus. I'm the leader of the office, and that's what leaders do. I take responsibility for that. There are other things that may happen as a result that haven't happened yet. But again, no human is perfect. Mistakes are made, but the mark of a good leader is to correct those errors as soon as possible and not to let them fester. So that's what we did. We also issued a public apology. Since he's represented by counsel, I understand it would be improper for me to contact him. But so that's what we did. And we made sure that that apology was as widely circulated as anything else that happened. So that's what happened in this case. It shouldn't have been issued by my prosecutor. When my supervisor found out about it, it was immediately dismissed. But again, in the interim, Mr. Williams spent, I think, what I've been told is 30 hours in jail, and that was 30 hours too many.
Okay. I understand, and I'm glad that your office has taken responsibility, and you personally, and errors do happen with technology and obviously with humans. One final point on this, you mentioned grainy footage, and as I understand it, the match that came back with respect to Robert Williams matched with a photo of him allegedly on social media, and it wasn't him. So
yeah, I don't know that. Yeah, I don't know that to be a fact or not a fact. I'm not questioning that at all. I just simply don't know.
Okay.
Again, when the supervisor found out about it, it was dismissed. So I can't talk about the quality of the evidence. But what I can talk about is the identification procedure was certainly flawed in many ways.
Oh, well, thank you for shedding light on that. And now I think Robyn wants to get to
I want to. Yeah, I was just talking to Ben Crump. We're going to actually have him on our Black Women Lawyers meeting tomorrow. And I was talking to him about, I had asked him, I said, had he met you? He said he had met you at a national bar event, because I was, in prepping for this interview, I was watching your interview with Steve Hood, where you were talking about the Malice Green case.
Right.
And can you tell our audience a little bit more about Malice Green, and then what your thoughts are about that case in the past, and then the George Floyd case?
There are many parallels, and that was back in 1992, and, people will remember, and that's why it's so important to remember our history and know how we got to the place where we are now. In 1992, Malice Green was beaten to death by 2 white police officers while other police officers stood around and watched. There were a total of 7 that were immediately dismissed by Stanley Knox, who was the police chief at the time. And as you know, Coleman Young, the late, great Coleman Young, was the mayor at the time. And he wasn't having it either. And neither was Stanley Knox. And so there was one African-American sergeant at the scene. He was the highest ranking person at the scene, who stood by and watched and did not stop them or did not say anything. As they were pummeling, yes, yeah. Did not say anything as they were pummeling Malice Green in the head with the Kell flashlights. And I don't think they use those heavy Kell flashlights anymore, but those were monstrous things. And so what made this even more impactful is that this was just weeks after Rodney King, the officers that chased and beat Rodney King were acquitted in Simi Valley in California, and LA was on fire. And so I was oblivious that it happened, because I was in the middle of another double homicide that I was trying, of an older woman who was beaten, and she's like 90 years old. And so I was called to my boss's office and assigned this case. And so we charged this case. It was a very, very politically unpopular thing to do at the time, just the opposite of today. That just was not done. You did not charge police officers in the course of their duty. And so we did, and we were facing, I faced death threats, all kinds of things that happened at the time, along with some of our witnesses. And we had to take them to safety. It was just a very, very explosive, sensitive time. But I think the most significant thing that happened is Don Barton, who owned Barton Cablevision at the time, did a very genius thing. This is before the days of court TV. This is before the days where people were watching these trials on TV. And he made it free on, I believe, one of the channels for everybody in Detroit and around Detroit to watch every minute of what happened inside that courtroom as we were prosecuting that case. At the time that we had Detroit Recorder's Court, which was the Detroit's court of criminal jurisdiction, the jurors came from Detroit only. And so the jurors, we had one jury for Walter Butson, one jury for Larry Nevers. And both of the juries had a majority of Black persons, African Americans on it. The reason why that was significant, as a result of that case and the convictions, they took away our court. And they said the only reason that he was convicted was because there were Black jurors that were deciding this case. It wasn't all Black jurors, but there were Black jurors deciding this case.
Okay.
And not because he was beaten in the head by flashlights, but because Black jurors were deciding it. And so they were convicted. This case still stands as the first case in American jurisprudence where on-duty police officers were convicted of murder.
Okay.
And he was killed for no reason, because he wouldn't open up his hand because the officer said that he had cocaine balled up in his hands. So Detroit didn't burn. Detroit, like I said, was able to see how hard we were fighting in that courtroom to convict these officers. And I think they had confidence, at least this time, in this case, in the criminal justice system. So we've carried that work forward. Like I said, I was an assistant. I went to the bench after that. And then I became the elected prosecutor in 2004. Our work in police brutality and police misconduct and police reform continues. We have a unit, as you probably know, called the Conviction Integrity Unit.
Yeah.
That all they do is handle cases of police misconduct, and whether it be sexual or beating or anything, they handle those cases, as well as cases where the police are shot at. and killed. So we were one of the only only offices, maybe there might be one other in the state that has such a unit that specifically deals with police misconduct. We have convicted over 70 police officers in the last 3 years, I believe it is, of misconduct. We had one leading case in Inkster, you may recall, Officer Melendez, back in 2015.
Yes,
he was convicted, which turned out to be a bogus traffic stop later. And then we have sexual misconduct, we have embezzlement, things like that. So again, we are dedicated toward it, and we've been working on police reform as well. Tell me if my answer's too long. In 2010,
no,
the DA of Fulton, in 2010, the DA in Fulton County, with the county seats of Atlanta, and I got our proposal and our reform proposal all the way to the White House. And so that's when, of course, when Barack Obama was there. So some of the things we were talking about then are still things that they're talking about now. I've always said that the time to fix the roof is when the sun is shining. We shouldn't have a George Floyd for us to be talking about police reform.
And
right.
what are your thoughts? I would say, just as a follow-up, what do you know, there's been discussion in the, there's some legislation that passed the House, and then it's been held up in the Senate. What are your thoughts in light of your history, this amazing history of having prosecuted one of the first cases in the nation? What do you think should happen today in light of Ahmaud Arbery? And, you got Ahmaud Arbery, you got George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, you've got Rayshard Brooks. And then I was just talking to Ben. He said there's another case of Pamela Taylor, which will be, I'm sure we'll be talking about going forward.
Yeah, it's, it's the first case where there were convictions for murder of police officers. Just want to make sure that that's corrected.
Right.
There are a number of things that I like that I see in these bills, and a number of things that I don't think go far enough. Obviously, we were talking about this back in 2010 and before that. Obviously, there should be a national database that details, or a registry, whatever you want to call it, that details police misconduct, and you know who these officers are. And certainly what I've been talking to the governor's office about now is a statewide database. And I think that's going to be part, and I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I know we've talked to her about that, about her staff about that. I haven't talked to her directly about that. But even going beyond that, obviously, getting rid of chokeholds and strangleholds, that's a no-brainer. Okay. Obviously, I think the database is a no-brainer. Obviously, implicit bias training for everybody, not just police officers, for everybody, is a no-brainer. I've attended several of those for prosecutors only. Obviously, more training in de-escalation, I think that's a no-brainer. But I also think that beyond that, we have to really take a really good look at qualified immunity when it comes to officers who kill or beat to death citizens. I also think, and both of you are aware of the child protection law, and that coaches and teachers must, by law, shall report instances of child abuse that they witness.
Right.
And I think it should be the same for police. I think police officers should be added to that. And no one's really talking about that, but I think police officers should be added to that. And by that I mean that police officers must report any instance of police brutality or police misconduct that they see. The ones that we see are the ones that are recorded by videotape, because everybody has a walking camera. When I did Malice back in 2093, that's when the summer of 2003 was a trial, there was no video. We didn't have video. We had witnesses that witnessed it on the street, that people tore up and maligned, and we were able to show that they were credible. So certainly I think that police officers must be in a position that they must report brutality that happens inside the precincts that we don't see, brutality that happens that are not filmed on camera that we don't see, brutalities that don't hit the news. And I think there should be either serious discipline or maybe even firing if they don't. There should always be an investigation that takes place. But again, I think that they should be a mandatory reporter. And so there are other things that...
Prosecutor Worthy, so on top of you're suggesting that police be mandated reporters as doctors and nurses and teachers are mandated reporters when it comes to child abuse. What about the duty to intervene? Is that a tandem approach?
Yeah, I think that's it's a different thing, but I think it's the same. Obviously, there should be a duty to intervene, and just like and I hate to talk about cases in other jurisdictions because I don't like to get involved in other prosecutorial strategies. And Keith Ellison certainly knows what he's doing. He's not the Attorney General by accident, but there are some parallels, and that there were officers standing around. And certainly I think that they should be charged if they were in a position to do something to help and did nothing.
Okay.
And especially my position on that has been, especially there have been sexual assault cases, for example, that have happened in the past that predate any of this, where there were actually people that were watching the sexual assault take place and cheering the people along that were conducting the sexual assault. So I think it's the same thing. And I know we've tried, I've tried personally, and the statewide organization of prosecutors has tried in the past to get what we call Good Samaritan laws passed, and that's what that is. That's a part and parcel of that. So that you must interact. And so certainly that should be a part of it. And it should be subject to the same legal standards that they're subject to, but the people actually taking place. They should be aiders and abettors, in my opinion. But again, it has to be within the confines of the law. And not in all cases you're going to be able to charge people that are simply, I shouldn't say simply, that are watching. You've got to be able to meet the legal standard, but in some cases you are, especially if there was any affirmative conduct that took place discouraging anyone from getting involved.
Okay.
Very good. So, Prosecutor Worthy, you said that you gave an interview to the Free Press about 3 years ago. I believe it was to a reporter by the name of Alicia Anderson, and this is circling back to Malice Green. And you said that you still get stopped about once a month while out in the community by people who remember that Malice Green trial, and they thank you. You also said that you thought that the outcome of the Malice Green case gave people some hope in the criminal justice system. Do you think that people in Wayne County still have that hope?
I hope so, because as you have noted, when you noted, Freddie Gray in Maryland and some other cases that they were charging, but there weren't convictions for various reasons. So I do have hope. When you don't have hope, that it's dead, and you don't have any belief or any feeling that things are going to change. So I hope that people in Wayne County know that not only will we prosecute the police when we can, and when the evidence shows that we can't, even if the public is demanding that they be charged, we don't have the evidence, we can't charge it. And so I do have that hope that things will get better. It feels different this time. I mean, we've heard cases, Tamar Rice and many other cases throughout the last few years, the last 3 or 4 years, even Trayvon Martin back in the last 3 or 4 years. And there was protesting for a while, and there was outrage for a while, and then it kind of died down. This feels different. I don't think it's going to stop, and I don't think it should. And I think that's good. I just wish that we had been talking about and doing some reforms, and people, we tried, and they've been turned back. But I think people are listening now, and I think we have a real chance now of make some meaningful, real change that really should have been on the backs of incidents that happened before. If it doesn't, that may be one way that I lose hope that I always have, if after all this attention, we can't get some real reform. But we have seen some things happen already. I know that they're working on the state level. I know that even when I talk to the police chiefs, their attitude is much different. So I'm hoping that continues, and that they're, So we have been, I have roundtables with them frequently, and either I'm there or a member of my staff is there, and usually I'm there. And we talk about these issues, and we've talked about implicit bias, and there has been this training. And sometimes when it's not continuous, people can forget and not take it full force. But I think this is different. We're going to continue what we're doing with the chiefs, and hopefully there will be some meaningful voluntary change, not because a law forced them to do something.
Well, you have taken a strong position on limiting qualified immunity. There have been some, recent, first of all, the president unveiled his executive order on police reform, and there have been some bills that have passed in the House regarding police reform. But if called to testify on a state or a federal level, would you testify against, or I should say, for limiting qualified immunity?
I think it should be limited, but absolutely it should be limited. But it's something that has to be studied and taken seriously. So yes, I think that those serious discussions have to take place. I mean, there are laws that we have to consider that may have to be changed, and maybe that has to be done as well. But yes, I have testified on the issues of police reform and police brutality in the past. It wouldn't be my first time, and so I'm absolutely willing to take that position, and I've taken it publicly.
Good,
okay.
Very good.
especially when it comes to more serious cases. And I'm not suggesting that all immunity be, let me be clear. I'm not suggesting that all immunity be gotten rid of, but certainly when it comes to these types of cases, definitely it should be.
Right. No, I definitely think, I've talked about, I teach a class and we read Ben Crump's book, Open Season, and he was talking about the slow death. It's the legalized genocide of colored people is the title of the book. And he talks about the police misconduct cases, the other cases where Black people have been brutalized in our nation, and then just some of the disparate issues in education, housing, employment, the whole 9 yards. And he talks about the cases, there's cases that have been successful, but the cases that have not, they get it into court and they don't have, and I think the qualified immunity issue is a big issue. If that was remedied, we wouldn't see as much of this brutalization. So, Madam Prosecutor, I do have another question. And Attorney Martin and I know I've been doing workshops on expungement. We were doing some things with the legislators and talking about expanding the expungement statute. And I wanted to get your position because what was told to me by we've worked with State Senator Jeff Irwin and State Rep Tanisha Yancey and Sherry Gay Dignogle. And what was told to me is that they were trying to make the statute expansive, but they said they were getting that there was the Prosecutors Association and the Police Officers Association were resistant to expanding the expungement statute. So I wanted to get your position on expungement because that's, as you know, I've been practicing 18 years and I've been doing probably like 15 years of it primarily in Wayne County. And we see so many people coming through the system that have mental health issues, drug issues. Now Michigan has legalized marijuana, which is great, but you've got a lot of folks that have been locked up and dealing with drug issues, marijuana, cocaine, heroin, all that. And there's disparity going on. There's people that want to get their records clean. They maybe have 20, 30 years of their record, but they haven't done anything. And they go to apply for a job and they're hindered. So I wanted to get your position on expungement or automatic expungement, things like that.
It's a good thing that there's a record of all this and that there's a record with our conversations with different legislators. And I sit on the legislative committee for the statewide organization. And I can tell you that that is not true. There are places where the bill started, where we certainly objected to some of the measures they were putting in place. But now we're at a place where we support all but one of the, we even support the one bad night, the way it's been done now. We support include the expansion of crimes that can be considered. We were certainly objected to some crime, like we objected very strongly to drunk driving not being expungible, for instance, for various reasons. And so the one that we have, and I had a discussion about this week, the one that we have objection to it in its current form is the automatic. And again, we still think that we're going to be, and I'm speaking of the organization now, we still think that we're going to be able to come to some agreement on that. Let me tell you what the sticking points are.
Are you against automatic expungement?
No. Let me tell you what the sticking points are. The sticking points are there is no requirement that the victim be made whole, for example. So if there was, and again, if they can afford it. And so again, if there was a court-ordered restitution by a judge after a hearing where the judge determined that this particular defendant could pay this amount. If in fact this was never paid, we have an issue with that. And we think that that should be paid first. Another one is, and so these are very practical reasons why in its current form, we object to it. Now, I think that we're going to get to a place where there's going to be agreement. I really do, because we've gotten to that. And remember, we've been working on this now for 2 years. And so, and some people in the legislature have been working there on this issue for a very long time as well. And so we have gotten to come to agreement on every other one except the automatic one. And one of the other sticking points in the automatic in its present form, and again, let me say again, I think we're going to be able to reach agreement, is that if you come from a neighboring state, and let's say that in Michigan, we have no problem with you expunging your conviction, but nobody knows what's happening in Ohio or Indiana or some other state, and you may have other convictions there. We should have a notice requirement to make sure those are taken care of as well. So those are two of the main sticking points. And again, we are in constant negotiations with that. That's how laws are made. Right. Many people don't want to talk about how the sausage is made, but to say that we're against all the expungement, it's just improper. It's not true. And I sit on that committee, and I know where we started. I know where we started on some of these bills that we were like, oh, no. And then when we were able to sit at a table and reach agreement, and we have people that sit on these committees all the time, we came to some very, very meaningful agreement. And so we do not object to, I don't even know how many there are now, but there are multiple expungement bills up there, as you know. It's the automatic one that we're trying to come to agreement with now. I think it's very important that if your house was burned down, for example, and the judge has determined that the person who burned down your house is able to pay the out-of-pocket expenses you have that were not covered by insurance, for example, then I think that that defendant should be made to pay it if they can. And I think that once that's done, then we don't have any objection to any automatic expenditure. So it's things like that for me to set the record straight that the Prosecutors Association we will come to terms with, I think.
Right. I know. Well, I was on a panel with Representative David LeGrand, who's been working on these issues for a long period of time, and he was talking about, he had worked as a prosecutor and a defense attorney, and just he has been on a mission to help people to get their records cleared. Because I'll say this on a practical level, I've been working. I got recruited by Judge Thomas, as other attorneys as well,
right. Yep.
And I have a number of people that are calling me, and then. Well, I will say about logistically having it set up the way it is now, where it's 1 felony, 2 misdemeanors, and then you're going to have to go piecemeal. Like I have a lot of clients that are struggling. And so as far as trying to get them to get all their paperwork together, that's why I'm more inclined to go with the automatic expungement, where we don't have to go through the whole, if they've done everything. On the issue about the finances, I think that's a big plugging point for people in Michigan, specifically Detroit. There are some folks that may not have the money to I think that's the sticking point too, is who's decide, I guess you're saying the judge, or the issue about the ability to pay is that because we, as we've worked in Wayne County, you've got a lot of people that are impoverished. That's part of why they get caught up in the system. That's not what we're talking about. That's absolutely not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who can afford to pay it. And where there has been a judicial determination after both sides, the prosecutor and the defense, have argued their position on that, or there's been an agreement as to what should be paid and what shouldn't be paid. And oftentimes, and we've and let me just also say this: even the law in its current form, for the time that I've been there since 2004, we haven't opposed any of them. We have not opposed not one expungement request, and so I think not one. I think we have, but I think clearly there needs to be reform. Clearly, it should be more than what it is now. But when you look at these bills that we've agreed to, I think it meets all those challenges. Like I'm saying, the only one that we are still, and when I say we, is I'm on the committee, but I'm not personally at the table doing this negotiation. But the only one that we have pause about, and we being the organization, is what I've already laid out. And we all feel, both sides that are negotiating, all sides, more than one, all sides feel that we're going to be able to come to a solution on that.
Okay. Prosecutor Worthy, we only have you for another maybe 11 and a half minutes, and I want to ask you about your priorities for the next 4 years. You are running for your seat again, and I practice in the juvenile court, and I would like to find out more about your plans for the juvenile court. You mentioned that you have a plan to expand restorative justice programs. If you could talk more about that, please.
Yeah. That's all right. Well, we have been doing restorative justice since 2005. I took office in 2004 when no one else was doing it. And I was wildly ridiculed. And, really, it only takes a click of a mouse to find those articles when they talk about me like a dog for doing that. So we have always had diversion programs, and diversion programs that work. Diversion programs that we have diverted 6,000 plus youth. If we include the truancy programs, it's up over 8,000 youth from the juvenile justice system.
What about Right Track? Does that include the Right Track?
It includes Right Track, yes. And before Right Track, as you know, it was called Correct Course. And so, but not only that, young offenders, young domestic violence, we work with service providers, and we make sure that they get the services that they need. And it's very hard to measure a negative. It's hard to measure people who don't come back to the system, or people who never get into the system because of it. So we have a new program called Talk It Out, and this is a mediated restorative justice. And what this means is we partner, and this is the wrong name, because I can never remember the new name of neighborhood.
Defenders Service?
No, not neighborhood defenders. The mediation, Wayne County Mediation
Wayne County
Services.
Dispute Resolution Center.
Thank you. That's it. So we have partnered with them, and so what happens is we have lower level crimes, then they are selected by our office when it's not a warrant juvenile court, when the petitions come into juvenile court. And we look at them and say, this is the case that is more ripe for mediation. And so we partner with them. They decide the victim has to agree to come. The parents and the juvenile agree to come, and we work out a solution based on what's mediated by the mediator. And so we are hoping that it's gotten a slow start because it's new. And so we're engaging now the churches and the police departments and the schools for that. But what we have in place, I'll talk it out. What we have in place also that we haven't launched yet, I shouldn't say we have in place. What we want to launch now is the other side of that. So when you have a youth that's been found responsible for carjacking or a highly assaultive crime, and they either have been on probation or they have been sentenced to one of the state facilities. So what we want is before they complete their time there, we want them to sit down again with the victim if they'll agree, and that's the most challenging part of these programs, is getting the victim to agree sometimes. But sometimes, we've had some of the most forgiving victims. They don't want to see the young man or the young woman, have the rest of their life encumbered by these convictions. So what we want to do is we are in a negotiation with also again a mediator, and probably the same mediator, where at the end of their time, after they have been found responsible, we want the victim to come in and say, this was carjacking. This is what happened as a result of you carjacking my car. I lost my job. I couldn't afford to get another car. And it really spiraled my own life out of control. And the hope is that they will listen, and hopefully this will turn them around from getting re-involved in the criminal activities, restoring a sense of dignity to this particular juvenile defendant. We are not asking for money. We're not asking for anything like that. We're simply asking for a mediated understanding of the behavior, the consequences of the behavior of the juvenile. So we are still working on that. We're hoping that.
Yet?
It's not named yet. It's a wraparound restorative justice. So it's based on a San Diego program that they have there. San Diego is much more moneyed than we are. And so that's part of the problem. But we're hoping that Wayne County Mediation Services will also be a part of that as well. So that's just one thing.
Talk It Out is available now, because I have a case I think could be is right up that alley. It's a simple assault. My client has no priors and did not get an offer, so we elected to go to trial. Talk It Out we want it to be pre-charged, but if there's already been a charge, we'll accept those cases too. We'll accept the cases where they've been charged too. Yeah. It's been. We had a big announcement about that last December, so it's about 9 months, about 8 to 9 months old right now. Some of the other things that we're looking at for the next 4 years. First, we want to continue the conviction integrity, and we're going to continue Fair Michigan, which is the one that deals with LGBT crimes. We want to continue the work that we started, in the elder abuse. But what we also want to do is with our conviction integrity unit, we've already been to the Wayne County Commission twice, but once with some of our exonerees, to try to get that program expanded. We are operating on a budget that's about $750,000 is the budget now that we were given by the commission. We want to double that, because we have looked at about 1,200 cases so far, and 700 of them have been cleared that the conviction was solid. We still have another about 500 that are in the queue now that we're investigating. We have 20 exonerations, and so these are very exhaustive examinations. We have to get the transcript, we have to read the transcript, we have to contact everybody if we can, we have to find evidence. We find in a lot of these cases have been destroyed, and we have to talk to the new witnesses, because again, we look at cases, as you know, that have a credible claim of innocence. So we have to investigate thoroughly the new evidence as well. And then many times it has to do with forensic science, so we have to have things retested. Oftentimes we use the investigative tool of a polygraph sometimes as well. And so they are exhaustive investigations that take a lot of time. And if we had double the staff we have now, we'd be able to move through more cases more quickly. So that's still heading up that.
Oh, absolutely. She's a national figure when it comes to this work.
Yes,
and
right.
She was actually one of the people that gave me my biggest nemesis when it came to this. I said I want to hire her because she's the one that gave me the hardest time on some of these cases. And so we're not afraid to look at these cases. But the other thing that we're working on, and this is Val's baby too, is I went to her, it must be, I don't know, last year sometime, I went to her and said, look, we want to make sure that when people are newly exonerated, we're not setting them up to fail. So I want wraparound services. And so that's what we're working on now. Housing, transportation, mental health, treatment. And one of the things that I have personally done is we have gone to some of our colleges and universities and some of our two-year institutions, and we've gotten commitments for free tuition for some of any exonerated that wants to go to school. Their main concern is that they have housing and transportation and can get to class. And so we have found that some of our exonerees are the most diligent students that you will find. And they have that thirst and they want to learn. So we want to make sure that that price is not tuition fees are not an impediment to them getting this education. So those are those when I say wraparound services, that's what I mean that we're working on to complete the process of a smooth transition. We have a lot of people doing a lot of work in this area. I don't mean to suggest that we're the only ones trying to do it, because that's not true. We have many organizations out there that have services for them, but we want to have, I don't think you can have enough services when you've been in prison for 34 years for a crime that you didn't commit.
And
so
are you moving the needle with this the conviction and wrongful conviction integrity unit? Because New York, I understand, is number 1 with wrongful convictions, but Michigan is number 5. Of course, that includes other counties. But is it moving the needle? Are we seeing any metric in the?
Well, here's the thing about that. We have, and this is a new accusation that has been leveled against our unit, that it's misleading, because the Wayne County has the most wrongful convictions than any other county in Michigan. We're the only ones looking at them. So we're the only ones exonerating them. Nobody else is doing it. So of course we're going to have more than everybody else. And we also do, another reason we're going to have more than anybody, we do 60% of all the trials in Michigan. So of course we have many, many more cases, but we're the only county in Michigan looking at these cases. And we're the only county in Michigan inviting people to submit cases to us, as long as it has Wayne County jurisdiction. And as you know, when the Attorney General, when Dana Nessel was elected 2 years ago, time has gone by quickly, she started a unit that takes cases from the rest of the state. So the other 82 counties they're trying to do, because they're not doing, and Val Newman helped Robyn Frankel, who runs that unit, they collaborated in setting that up as well. So of course we're going to have more. We're the only ones soliciting cases to do this work. And so if we weren't, our numbers would be down. So, and of course we do most of the trials in Michigan than anybody else combined. So the whole state combined is, I think it's like 50, somewhere just under 60%. And the whole state combined is the other 40. So when you look at it that way, you get a more clearer picture about what's really going on.
Well, I do want to add with what you were saying about the juvenile programs, with the work I've done there as a lawyer guardian ad litem and an educational advocate, and I did work with we had the intensive program that's at the mental health court, so where it wasn't the typical situation. It was like diversion and things of that nature. What I was seeing is that there is a great need for the youth, for there to be more mentoring programs, male mentors, because what was happening is you would see the kids would see the referee or the judge, Judge Joseph or Referee Crutchfield, as like a father figure. And as we were trying to come in, we're giving intensive services to the kids and programming for the parents. What I often would see is sometimes it wasn't the kids. Like, we would get the kids special ed support services, but if the parents were not following through and complying with what we were wanting to have happen, then the kids were. That explained part of why the kids were having all these issues. So there's definitely a need for male mentoring, for Black male mentoring, for the children, because it's like they're in these environments and they're only seeing certain things, and it's like they have this energy, and it's like they're doing negative stuff to get attention. It's like we want to channel them in a positive direction, and not. Right. Go ahead.
And there's so much there, so much there, that I could talk for an hour about the services that are needed for our juveniles, but not just for our juveniles, for our children before they become to that age. I'm a 30-year, almost 40-year mental health advocate, my family and I. And I had a brother that didn't have mental health issues, but he had what was they call it developmentally disabled now in the vernacular, and we called mental retardation before. And so even back then, the family as a family unit would try to find services, and we finally ended up establishing some group homes that are very, very respected for him to live on an adult juvenile facility. The reason I say that is because I am a mother of 3 adopted children from the Michigan foster care system. And at any given time, there are 14,000 children that need to be adopted from that system. And
Right.
a majority of them have these mental health issues. And so when you bring these children home because you want to care for them and give them a loving home, their problems come with them. And let me tell you, I have personal experience in knowing there are not enough facilities to deal with our children and their mental health concerns. There are not enough facilities to deal with teens and adolescents and their mental health concerns. There are not enough to deal with adults. And for us doing the job that we're doing now in the jail, and because of COVID-19 and releasing people from the jail, and the jail population is 41% down from what it was. But what I found out recently that I did not know, and I was shocked I did not know it, I pride myself in my knowledge on mental health issues. And when I was on the bench, I made sure to craft programs. Even now we have programs in the prosecutor's office, with not just the mental health court. But I found out that when people are adjudged incompetent to stand trial, there is no place for them to go.
Right.
So we have several people that are sitting in the jail now.
I have some folks
incompetent to stand trial, and the forensic center can't take them. They don't have the beds, and they're sitting there in the jail where they don't belong to, where they don't need to be, because there's no place they can go for them to get hold. And so,
well, we can thank Governor Engler for putting the kibosh on all the mental health facilities. But Prosecutor Worthy, you said you had a hard stop at 10:50. I don't want to derail you from your campaign trail. I know that you're very busy, but I hope that maybe you could carve out some time to come back, because there's so much to talk about with and the backlog and the second cases and human trafficking.
Yes, we do.
Come back for part 2 if you've got.
I would love to. I would love to do that, and also I would love to. I would love to do a show on the mental health issue and bring in some experts and some other adoptive parents that are having these struggles with their children. And so that's another issue that I would love to talk about that I'm heavily involved with right now.
Okay.
Right, and I did extend the invite for Black women lawyers. I know we wanted to see if you could come for July 25th at 1:00 with a forum.
I'm sure that's fine. I'll look at my schedule. I did receive that, I think, this week, and so if I'm not available, I'll make myself available.
Okay, and if somebody wants to help your campaign, they want to be a part of it, where do they go?
They go to www.kymworthy.com, and on Facebook they go to Prosecutor Kym Worthy.
Okay.
Right.
And then the other thing I want to mention, they also can call my campaign manager, Darcy, and of course I don't have the number in front of me.
It's Darcy McConnell.
Yeah, Darcy McConnell at 313-686-8094. 313-686-8094.
Okay. All righty. Well, thank you, Madam Prosecutor.
Everybody listening, please support me on August the 4th, or you can vote for me tomorrow on absentee. So thank you so much for having me. And I would love to come on and talk about some of the issues that I'm passionate about, and I know that you're passionate about as well.
Okay,
wonderful.
Well, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Nice job on the piece, too.
Thank you very much. Great.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Wow, interesting.
I know.
Interesting. Yeah, and we had 50 minutes, actually 52 minutes with Kym Worthy, Wayne County Prosecutor. She's had 4 terms. She's running again, but she's facing an insurgent candidate in the form of Victoria Burton Harris, who we had the pleasure of interviewing last week. It's interesting. They have, I don't know, in some ways, similar philosophies, but perhaps different approaches about things.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting that Prosecutor Worthy did ask for the vote right now. And she's absolutely right, because the absentee ballots are in mailboxes now. People are voting. Some people have already voted because of COVID-19. They're not going to be going to the polling place come August the 4th, which is the date and time of the Michigan primary, which is exactly 37 days, 13 hours, 5 minutes, and 31 seconds at the time of this broadcast. It's an interesting election cycle. And she got that big endorsement from the governor, but Victoria Burton Harris got a big endorsement from Bernie Sanders, who, is very popular. So fascinating race. And I understand they have a big forum tomorrow where they will be facing off against each other. Victoria Burton Harris, the challenger, and Kym Worthy, the incumbent prosecutor. What's your take?
Yeah, well, it should be interesting. I mean, we've extended the invite for Black women lawyers to do something on July 25th. So hopefully we can get the 2 of them to come in, and we'll have some questions, because I know when we first announced that we were interviewing Kym Worthy, we did have some folks say that they wanted to ask questions, and I was able to get to some of the questions that I had, and but we hopefully we'll get the opportunity to have her. She said she could come back and we can ask her some more questions, because I think I always talk about knowledge is power. It's important that we hear from people, her from Victoria, let them clear up some of the discrepancies that are out there. I think that the voters should be informed about who they're voting for, their background. Madam Prosecutor Worthy, the whole background with Malice Green, it's so, when you look, I was looking up at some of the videos of that. I mean, I was younger, obviously I was aware of it, but now with the whole George Floyd situation, it's just, it's very interesting. And the fact that she's talked about having proposed legislation on police reform. I'm like, when I was talking to Ben Crump, who will be with us tomorrow at 4 for the Black Women on the Black Women Lawyers Facebook page, we'll be doing a Zoom.
How does that work? Can anybody just go to the BLAM Facebook page and they can see Ben Crump talk?
Yeah, he'll be there, and he'll be interviewed by myself, our Madam President, Rita White, and Kim Ward, who's the region director for the NBA. As you know, you and I are both members of the National Bar Association, which was created in 1925. It's like the counterpart to the American Bar Association. The American Bar Association includes all the lawyers. The National Bar Association, it was started in 1925 because initially they would not let Black folk join, and so the National Bar was created, and they are, they have a wonderful, they have conferences year round, and they actually have online conference like panels and programs now, and you can get involved. They have a police misconduct task force, and they deal with with the election, the presidential election, and educational issues, personal injury, whatever. If you're a lawyer and you're African American, and I think of it, it's like Black Family Reunion for lawyers. You get to go to these conferences. They have the annual conference, which is typically in July, and you get to see lawyers from all over the nation and go to these panels and hear them speak about different areas. And I've mentioned before, for me, I had been active and I had been away for a while because I got married in life, and then I came back in 2015 when Pamela Means was the president and Ben Crump was the incoming president, and they had an amazing panel where they were talking about police misconduct. And I went there to New York last year, and they had Ben Crump, Lee Merritt, who's on the Ahmaud Arbery case, Chris Stewart, who's on the Rashard Brooks case. They were there. They were in force, and they were recruiting. They want more of us lawyers, African-American lawyers, to get involved and handle these police misconduct cases or send the cases their way, so that we can have and look at this police reform issue, so we can have uniformity on changing these laws and helping to protect the lives of Black men, women, and children. And for Madam Prosecutor Worthy to have that background and see that she's still involved with the issues, I think that's important. And it's important that we make sure at this time we've got this COVID, that everybody is connected, that we all, as Black lawyers in general, I'm a member of the Wayne County Criminal Defense Bar, and we have Black, white, Hispanic, Arab lawyers. We're all coming together. We've been trying to file motions for compassionate release, and we have volunteers that are helping to represent the protesters. So it's just, in order to get success, we have to all come together as a team.
So, well, that's great that Attorney Ben Crump is coming tomorrow to join the Black Women Lawyers Association of Michigan on a Zoominar, and you said it's at 1 o'clock?
It'll be at 4 o'clock. Like for our members, for our members of Black Women Lawyers in Michigan, and you can go to our website to join. Our regular meeting will be at 3 o'clock. That's for our members for Black Women Lawyers in Michigan. But Ben will be joining us. I just talked to him 4 to 4:45 tomorrow. So we're really excited because we've had a number of our members have been concerned about these cases. Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, asking what can we do? How can we help? Some of us can go out and maybe be a part of the protest. Some of us maybe for health issues may not be able to go out, and we have to do things online or just figure out how, there's supposed to be a boycott on July 7th of all companies that are not supportive of Black folk, basically. So I know we'll get more of that information out. But I did want to talk to you. I just saw Joy Reid has gotten a promotion, and she's supposed
she's taking a Chris Hardball's place. Yeah, some people are happy about it, some people are not, but I like Joy Reid. I mean, I don't watch MSNBC all the time because I'm a news junkie like you, and so I'm constantly surfing, from CNN to Fox News to MSNBC, the Newsy, to everything, okay, because I like to see and hear the different perspectives. But congratulations to Joy Reid. I think she started out on YouTube, and she got discovered, and now she's on a national cable channel. So
yeah, I watch her. I watch her. We're here now, but I record Joy Reid. I watch Joy Reid. I watch Al Sharpton's show. I have started to. I'm recording Harris Faulkner, who's on Fox News, because I think it's good to have the diversity of opinion. But I went to see Joy Reid. She came to EMU a few years ago, and she was amazing. I've read her background, and I definitely feel that she makes sure that on her show to bring attention to all these issues that are affecting Black folks and immigrants and women and LGBTQ, all of that. So I applaud her. I think that she's phenomenal. So I'm definitely excited about that. And because, we need to have more diversity, more Black folk, just like we talk with the Democratic Party. Black women, we do so much, we contribute, but we need to have more of us in positions of leadership, just like in television. We need to have, little Black girls are watching, watching TV. And if you don't see yourself, how can you, you see Madam Prosecutor Kym Worthy, she aspired to be a prosecutor. She became a prosecutor. But it's how can people have these dreams and aspire to do things if they don't see people that look like them?
Yes, I thought that was interesting how she said that she watched the show Julia. I think that came on back in the 60s, and the late Diane Carroll, who is not only a wonderful actress, but so intelligent and extremely beautiful, and later starred on Dynasty.
Oh, I loved her. Yes, I loved.
And she was a single mom because she was a widow, and she had a son by the name of Corey. And she was a nurse, like your mom,
right.
Nurse Pam.
Shout out to Nurse Pam.
It was interesting, though, because, Prosecutor Worthy, she didn't see herself in terms of any lawyers or judges, but she did see a professional woman in the form of an RN. And that obviously was very inspiring to her because, in more recent times, I've looked at shows and I've wondered, how come there's no, for example, Black bachelor or a Black bachelorette? Now, we do have a new Black guy who's going to be the Black, bachelor. But I mean, in 2020, why did it take all these years? I think that show's been on for 24 seasons or something.
Right,
come on, what, where's the diversity? And, you mentioned something a moment ago that really, struck me. That there was a time in this country, there's all this talk about systemic racism, which does exist. It is real. But there was a time in this country when a person such as yourself or myself could attend law school and graduate with honors, take the bar exam, pass the bar exam, but yet not be able to become a member of the American Bar Association. How dreadful is that? And that is why the National Bar Association was formed, so that Black attorneys in this country could have an association for themselves. And, you mentioned about police reform. It's nice that people are out protesting, because I do believe that the protests in Minneapolis did spur action towards police reform. But it's really going to take politicians and organizations like the National Bar Association to have a legislative committee, to lobby, to advocate for real reform. Because right now, people can talk, but in terms of real change being effectuated, that only happens, as you know, on the legislative level. And so I'm so glad that Prosecutor Worthy also talked today about her office's position on expungements. And I thought it was interesting how she did clarify the Wayne County Prosecutor's office's position on automatic expungements. Personally, I think that if an individual meets all the criteria, they pay their debt to society, and if they pay their restitution, all these things can be ferreted out through the data gathering process. You can create an algorithm, and an individual should still, I believe personally, be able to receive an automatic expungement in this state.
Right, and I know she was saying for her office, but I mean I've had experiences in other counties. I mean I know, and my colleagues have talked about some other counties like Washtenaw County, where there has been some resistance from the prosecutor's office. I know I'll be Judge Nance has me on her show later on today, where we'll be talking to some of the candidates in Oakland County, and it'll be interesting to get their perspective about expungement, because there have been other attorneys that have reported to me that in some of the counties they have encountered resistance to attempts to help people to clear their record and redeem themselves, and so that should definitely be interesting, to see how that.
What time does Judge Nance's show come on?
That'll be from 6 to 8, and that'll be 9:10 a.m. I think it's going to be on Facebook and the radio. Once I get the information, I'll be sure to share that. Yeah, they have a prosecutorial race in Oakland County, and then in Washtenaw County, you've got Ellie Savitt, Ariane Slay, who's African American, and Hugo Mack, who's also African American. They're running, so we may try to see if we can get some of them to come on our show and give us their platform for, why should we look at them as prosecutors? What does criminal justice reform look like? There is a movement. You have Marilyn Mosby, Kim Fox. You have across the nation, Krasner in Pennsylvania. You have some progressives that have come in to really reform the criminal justice system. I feel like, just like we talk about, it's all connected. The race relations we're long overdue. With the ABA, you have the incoming president is actually Reginald Turner, who was a former National Bar Association president. So I think it's good for all of us, like the Black lawyers, white lawyers, all the lawyers, to come together. With COVID, it's kind of forced some of us. We don't have a choice. We're kind of stuck in place. So it's a good time for lawyers to come together and try to think of solutions, come up with solutions to help our common man, and our brothers and sisters that are mentally ill, that are dealing with drug issues, or that are just struggling with the realities of poverty in America.
Yes, I mean, it is an excellent time. On the one hand, it's tragic because this country is experiencing a lack of leadership coming out of Washington, D.C. Yes, I am talking about POTUS, a initial denier of coronavirus. And I find it interesting now that you have Republicans who are saying, yes, you should wear a mask, like Marco Rubio. He said, wear a damn mask, basically. And there are other Republicans. Mitch McConnell, for God's sake, has come out and said, Moscow Mitch, that people should wear a mask. And, I find, very interesting. You mentioned about these progressive candidates. And there is an insurgency happening right now all across the country because, for example, in the primary leading up to the general, there's been a challenge to Mitch McConnell's seat, frankly. And Amy McGrath was thought to have been key challenger. But now this gentleman black guy by the name of Charles Booker's come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was like, I saw the news. Like, where did he come from?
Right. On the platform, he's rising on the wings of the platform of racial and social justice, and he is doing it. So he might knock Amy McGrath out the box, and wouldn't it be something if he could knock out Mitch McConnell? I mean, that would just be amazing to me. So there is some change happening across the country in terms of this election cycle. I personally find it fascinating. And what I also find fascinating is that it appeared that POTUS, Donald J. Trump, was conceding, because he did an interview yesterday and he said that, he was bashing Joe Biden and basically was saying that Joe Biden doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Wow, really? Okay. And that this was the key part. He says, and people are going to vote for him because they don't like my style or something to words to that effect. I'm not quoting him verbatim, but it was these words that implied a concession, like he expects to lose in November, and I find that very interesting. Of course, he's still in the mix. He's still running. He's going to be at the presidential debates. I'm so sad that we lost the debate here in Michigan. It's not going to happen at the
I don't understand. Like, where's the love for Michigan? I know it doesn't have to. You and I, when we're at the primary, one of the primary, the debates here, when it was crowded, and okay, we've got COVID, so you don't have to have the crowd, but you could still have the candidates show up and be, because Michigan, we need love here in Michigan. We've got all kinds of things going on. We've been hit hard by COVID, even though we've had our wonderful governor has done all that she can to protect us. But we still have the Flint, the repercussions of the Flint water crisis. Detroit has issues with poverty. Benton Harbor has been having issues with the, getting the right supports for the public school system. So Michigan definitely needs some love. I think I would say one of the single most things as far as the election in November, Mitch McConnell, like if we could have somebody, prevail against him, have a Democrat prevail, that would be a major coup, because I think he's most single-handedly has been responsible for so many things that have gone wrong. Particularly I think about, Attorney Taylor, my partner is always talking about that the president has appointed all these people as judges. There's only been 3 African American, and Mitch McConnell is part of that. And I'm like, he needs to go. We need to vote him out. He's got to go. I'm like, I know people are talking about the president. I'm like, well, look, Mitch McConnell. I think that's probably going to be one of the most important races in our nation, in terms of making change. And if we can get the Senate, the Dems in the Senate, and then because then we got the House is passing all this wonderful legislation. They want to make DC a state, but if it gets bottled up in the Senate, it gets held up in the Senate.
Right.
Right. And that's a
right.
problem. And then I know you probably also, the president has been talking about the issue with the statues, and it's exciting to see that these Confederate statues have come down. But I did, a professor or Attorney Taylor and I did take issue with them folks taking down Ulysses Grant's statue. If you watch on the History Channel, they've been talking about he won the Civil War. He was a general. He was our president. He was responsible in part with what Abraham Lincoln was doing with Reconstruction for 12 years, and so it's like I don't think that he's not a statue that we need to be taken down. The Confederate statues, take them down, put them in a museum. You don't want to forget the racism that's been here. But Ulysses S. Grant, I'm kind of like, he did own a slave, but that was through his marriage, and he let the slave go. So he freed the slave, only had it for, I think it was like a year. So yeah.
Slavery is slavery.
Slavery is slavery. I understand that. Yeah.
Anyway, but I don't really feel that sad about that. But the POTUS is fighting back on this whole issue, and he is such a divider in chief. I think that is his strategy to really manipulate the culture wars that exist in the United States of America right now. Because let's face it, we have politicized culture wars based on whether or not people wear a face mask, and unfortunately we've seen these surges in coronavirus across the country, and I do believe it's because people are not wearing the personal protection equipment. They're not wearing the face mask. They're not social distancing. They're not using the sanitizer. I personally don't like to wear a mask because it affects my voice, and I use my voice to make a living, and it's very important to me. And I've noticed that since I had to, wear a mask, and I do wear a mask when I go out in public, it affects my voice, but I still do it.
Which
You
is
just have
rightly
to
so.
do it,
You want to live.
know?
You want to live. You don't want to get sick. I mean,
Right.
especially if you're in a state like Florida, Texas, Arizona, where the hospitals are crowded, you may not even be able to get into the hospital if you get sick.
Right, because they're already at capacity for their ICU beds, and it's a sad situation. I just feel like we're playing American roulette. You know, it's going to be totally the survival of the luckiest. And the thing about this virus, it is a novel coronavirus. There's still so many things that people don't know about it. When I say people, I mean the experts, epidemiologists. We had Dr. Abdul El Sayed on the show a couple weeks back, and he had some really interesting things to say. And, you know, he talked about a vaccine coming, and he said that the most vulnerable population should be first in line to receive the vaccine. But you know, I know there's this race to develop a vaccine, Moderna, the Chinese, there's another outfit, but a lot of people are going to be reticent to line up for a vaccine that's been developed under, you know, such a short time span when it normally takes years to develop a vaccine. People are not going to trust that. So we've got a lot of issues, and I do think that all of this is a constellation of crap, frankly, for POTUS, because now the economy is in the toilet. You've got this coronavirus surging. You have insurgent candidates challenging Republicans all across the country, and it's not looking good for him. It's not looking good for the president at all. And I think that I want to ask you this question. Do you think that people are going to be more motivated to vote this year in both the primary and the general election?
I really think, I mean, when I'm talking to some of the young people, they're sad. They're worried about, some of them are not so much worried about like politics. They're worried about having food and shelter and having a job. And I mean, I was talking to my nephew who was saying, he said he could definitely see why there's going to be more protesting, because if people aren't working, they're going to, I mean, they're obviously going to protest because there are wrong things that are happening. George Floyd, the brutality of that has occurred to Black folk in our country, that's important. I think that people are gonna be looking for Biden, like in terms of his VP choice. If he gets a VP choice that's gonna inspire folks, I mean, you know, I've talked about it. We have, you know, you have Elizabeth. I like Elizabeth Warren. I like Val Demings. I know I like Kamala Harris. I know some of the younger people, when she wasn't as popular with some of those folks. Cuomo, I know that Biden promised that he said it was going to be a woman, but there's a lot of buzz around Cuomo and how he looks very presidential, and the way he's handled everything in COVID with having his PowerPoint. So I think that if he gets I mean, I've met Biden. He's very personable. I think he's a good candidate. You know, he flubs, but he's human. He flubs when he talks, but he's human. You know, humans do that sometimes. And I think he's a good candidate. I think if he gets a vice president choice that is going to ignite folks, then yes, you will get people to come out to the poll. I worked with the Obama campaign.
Who would ignite? Who would spark the base? You know, who would, and not even the base, but who would just, you know, spark enthusiasm among people who don't normally even vote, or who are casual voters on the Democrat side? Who do you think would ignite some excitement, frankly?
Well, as I said, I think Cuomo would be my number one. I know some people have talked about the governor of California.
It's gonna be a woman. Biden is already
okay. So if it's a woman, yeah, if it's a woman, I mean, I don't know. There's been some buzz around Susan Rice. You know, a lot of people like Elizabeth Warren. Kamala Harris, I've listened to her book, and she talks a lot. She's very insightful about criminal justice reform, police justice reform. So I would think it would help if we could get some folks that were choice that would really excite folks. I know Amy Klobuchar, Senator Klobuchar pulled out of the race, which I think was rightfully so because of that history going on with that officer involved with the George Floyd case. You know.
Right. Well, you know what I find interesting about this whole race, I'm going to change my camera angle because maybe you can see.
Oh, yes. Okay. That's
outside. So I think that they're still deciding. And obviously, and so I did hear that Big Gretch, as they call her, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, is really no longer in the running. She's third tier. I don't think they even interviewed her. Stacey Abrams never got an interview. You know, you have heard names like Kamala Harris and Susan Rice, and two mayors, Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta and Muriel Bowser of DC. You've even heard, well, you said Val Demings, but there's a governor out in New Mexico as well, Grisham. But of late, and I think this person really could be a true running mate for Biden, Karen Bass, who was the chair of the
I think
Congressional
she
Black
would.
Caucus.
Yeah.
She's a 5-time congresswoman, represents the area of Los Angeles, and she is dynamic.
She
and
is. She would be amazing.
She's been vetted. She's been interviewed. She's being vetted right now. And I would say, do not rule out Karen Bass.
So yes, so I saw she was. They were interviewing her on AM Joy yesterday with Hakeem Jeffries and Val Demings. They were talking about the police justice reform measure. But yes, I've met Karen Bass. I've been to the. You know, I've talked to you before about the Congressional Black Caucus. They have their event every September. And yes, she is. I think she would be amazing. She's well versed on all of these issues that are affecting folks, and Black issues, police reform, the issue with children, the disproportionate number of children that of color, Black children that have been suicidal. So my assistant Camille has interacted with Congresswoman Bass, so I think she would be an excellent choice. Yes. And I mean, I think the mayor of Atlanta and DC, though, they have been bosses, you know, in terms of dealing with COVID and the protests, and they've done some amazing things. As I said, Cuomo, I know Cuomo is a man, but Cuomo has, you know, you just really, during COVID, we have seen some people that have really taken this time of crisis, and they've risen to the occasion. They've helped us to understand, you know, like I have this mug. At the end of the day, Democrat, Republican, Independent, we're American. You know, we're all on the same boat. So if the boat is going down, all of us are going to be affected. So it's not really time for us to be getting caught up in fighting and we got to come together. We got to figure this out. I mean, in the South, you know, first COVID came and they said it was older people, but they're saying it's a lot of younger people now that are getting the virus and that are affected.
Well, this is the thing. They're asymptomatic though, so they're super spreaders. They're spreading it. It's a contagious disease, and they're getting mild symptoms, but they're spreading it. When they're spreading it, it's like a death sentence for those who they come in contact with. So it's still scary times. And I wanted to ask the prosecutor about what she thought about these Zoom hearings, you know, probable cause conferences and prelims going on Zoom. And, you know, we know jury trials can't happen on Zoom, but maybe that could be reserved for a later interview with her. You know, as we said, we had many questions, you know, remaining for her. And did you say that there's going to be a BLAM, Black Women Lawyers Association of Michigan Candidates Forum coming up?
Yes, that's the plan. We are going to be reaching out. I mean, I know we'll be talking about that more tomorrow at the meeting, but we do want to have a judicial candidates forum. I know that we'll be reaching out to the judicial candidates for the Third Circuit, and as well as the prosecutorial candidates, so that we can have an opportunity to, you know, people can give us questions to ask, and we can ask the candidates, because again, knowledge is power. And I mean, I know, as I've been very involved, since I was a congressional page, since I was 16, I've been involved with politics. And I know a lot of people do is sometimes they'll wait to the last minute, and then they'll start calling me or some of my friends and saying, who are you voting for? Why are you voting for them? So I think it's important that we try to have as much knowledge as possible about the candidates that are running, because sometimes people will go to the polls and they just vote. Oh, I'm going to vote for the woman, or I'm going to vote for the person. Maybe they have an ethnic name or something, and they don't know who the candidates are. So I think it's definitely important. I know you've done your campaign, and you've been putting information out there about voter information, voter registration. I think that definitely the more information that gets out there, the better for everybody.
I agree. And so with that, I know we've got about 6 minutes to go. Who is your hero of the week and or villain of the week? Or do you have anyone this week that fills those categories?
Gosh, I mean, well, with Ben is my hero. I'm gonna say
Okay.
Ben Crump, but Ben is like my hero probably for like the week, the month, the year. I mean, Ben, and I know you said only one because it's like Ben, Lee Merritt, Chris Stewart, but I mean, Ben, I would say is amazing. As far as a villain, gosh, I'd have to think about who is the villain, because there's some folks that are just foolish and they're just gonna be that way. So I'm not even gonna give them all that energy to say that they're a villain. I have to come back on that villain one. What about you? Who is your hero for the week, and then villain?